Good day. This afternoon is June 25th, 2021. And this is supposed to be the disclosure week. In fact, I think it was today that they're supposed to disclose. The Pentagon or Air Force or whatever officials are supposed to give you a report on UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrials and Nazis and different societies and all this. Today, I just put this shirt on for you because it's been 105 and it's cooled down to about 100 now. It's a little after 7 o'clock. Yesterday I went over to Luke Air Force Base and attempted to give to one of their equals of a lawyer a report on and a way to help the Insurrection Act, if it was ever passed or not by or signed by President Trump before he got out of office, after he'd been booted out by vote rigging, machine rigging. As I told the sergeant at the visitor's desk at the gate at Luke Air Force Base, this material, it may seem small, but it's kind of like the method that the FBI prosecuted and convicted one of the mafia bosses back in the 1930s. They got him on tax evasion. They couldn't get him on the other things that were far worse that he was doing. Al Capone, I think, was or one of those from Chicago. That sometimes the little facts are easier to prove and accumulate to put somebody away. Of course, the system, the empire, whatever you want to call it, the beast, United States of America, no, United States Incorporated, they're perpetuating criminal activity, and yet they're going after the little guys for civil violations, or so they are charging them with. And they're putting the civil violations, the civil question, ahead of criminal activity, because it's a lot easier to go after the civil codes and instead of the really big things that are corrupting and holding this world back, holding this planet, holding the people back, holding the people down as slaves. Anyway, I'm just going to read this because this buck sergeant, her name was McClinton, probably came into the military under Obama, and would be probably classified as one of the woke military, and so she was an E4, or is an E4, and she took it upon herself to say that the military didn't want this. But I noticed there was a camera that was set up to record anything that somebody sat in that chair. So it's recorded whether she wanted it or not. Of course, the recording could be destroyed, automatically erased after 48 hours or whatever. But I'm going to read this because it's more of a disclosure than what you're going to get from the news media, so-called news media, that's owned and controlled by the same corporation that's legally, due to your signing up with them as and appointing them as representatives instead of you self-governing, they're blaming it on you because you signed the paperwork to make them elite, the powers that be over you. And it's that simple. So anyway, I delivered this written material regarding the Insurrection Act to the Military Justice Court. Local county, I wrote this up June 23rd, 2021. Local county of officers have trespassed on my foreign estate and charged me with Uniform Commercial Code violations. The issue is one of identity regarding both parties. I have made my identity clear for decades at various courthouse recorders across the Southwest, including Texas. I am a non-resident alien, a foreigner to the forum body politic in question. The county, on the other hand, is participating in a misrepresentation of identity, misprison, a fraud, and felony action. Which are they? They're either a governmental body or a corporation acting as a service provider. Which are they? They have to be either Pinal County, or are they in fact the County of Pinal, a municipal corporation listed on Dun & Bradstreet, which is a commercial business directory of record. And just about everything listed on there is part of the grid owned by the City of London, Incorporated. Now, that's not the London in England city, it's the corporation, City of London, just like the corporation in Washington, D.C., just like the federal corporation. The county in question is attempting to enforce codes on me, their codes, part of the Uniform Commercial Codes, and is therefore acting as a municipal corporation. If this community development, which they call themselves, is indeed the private corporate listed on Dun & Bradstreet, I have not signed a contract for services with them, and therefore I am not obligated to comply with the enforcement of their commercial codes, as I am outside their jurisdiction. It's as short and simple as that. It's said in the legal matters that the shorter and more simple you can write something up, the stronger it is. And that's it. Now I'm going to try to explain this a little bit more to you, because there is much confusion. One of them is confusion of words. Extraterrestrials, foreigners, aliens. All these identities are related. In a sense, we're blood cousins. It's just a matter of a little bit of time that separates us. When we pass on, or before we're born, it's just a different dimension. It's been called the veil, or the other side over the ages. Of course, a lot of people don't accept this as part of our reality because it's not physical. So be it. A lot of these people that don't want to be open to the possibility that there's another side or more to this physical, more than what is our physical dimensions, they're almost forced into this because to do so would give more meaning to one having to pay penalties for what we do in the physical. So the corrupt can be more corrupt as long as they don't want to play with the possibility of there being consequences in an afterlife or a pre-life or something. So there's really no extraterrestrials, there's no real aliens, except if you want to look at the aliens as the aliens that are coming across the southern border here in great numbers, welcomed by the bankers, because the more that they have come across the border and are no longer aliens or unregistered documented persons, men and women, once they sign up and get their name on the list, they are a person and they can be used to help perpetuate the debt system, the petrodollar. So that's why Biden and his cronies are urging and paying for more of these aliens or extraterrestrials or whatever you want to call them to sign up with the corporation so that the banks can perpetuate their debt onto you, because that's what it all boils down to. The more you owe them, the bigger slave you are. So that's how the empire continues. And the more in debt or bankrupt it becomes, the more suckers it needs to perpetuate its debt, or the whole system collapses. That's as simple as you can get. And that's basically what was a lot of evidence pointing to this and explaining it was in the Murr building in Oklahoma City when it was bombed and all the records were supposedly destroyed. And the same goes with the Pentagon and the Twin Towers and Building 7. That didn't happen by some guy over in a cave in Afghanistan any more than some patriots blew up the Murr building. It was people on the inside that did it to get rid of the records that were against them. Of course, the question is whether there was indeed a helicopter on top of the Murr building the morning of the bombing, and also whether a lot of the records were snuck out of the Twin Towers and the Pentagon prior to them being blown up. That's it in a nutshell. All this other disclosure stuff that they keep talking about is just old little tiny stuff. Most of these lights that are being seen in the skies are what you'd call spirit lights that are becoming closer and closer to our frequency, to our physical frequency. And some people are more tuned in or allow themselves the ability to perceive these lights. It's just like with spirits from the afterlife, or I don't like to use the word demons because that's labeling them as good or bad. They're spirits that have been abandoned around Earth and can't go any further. In the recycling program, if you want to call it that higher entities move other entities around the universe, whether you want to call it heaven or whatever. But Earth is, in a sense, hell. And it can be hell in the physical, like it is with me right now, because of a bunch of silly, blown up enforcers that are basically like a big tick. And the more blood they can suck, the bigger the county can become, and the bigger buildings they can have. I went down to their courthouse Friday. Yeah, it was Friday, I think. This past Friday. And tried to figure out what was going on, and saw different people there. And they have this huge, brand new spanking multi-million, super high stories. It's 3 stories, but I mean each story is super high. And this is the fanciest building for a small county such as Pinal County, which is next to Maricopa County in Arizona. And all a bunch of peons are having to pay their taxes for these big ticks. They're basically just sucking the taxpayers. And their one aim in life is to get bigger and fatter and have more ticks around them, and so that they can live in or work in these big, super, more expensive offices and make you all in debt to them. And they don't want this information out because they don't want you to take your power of attorney back, which is your freedom that was gained through the Revolutionary War back in the 1700s. And of course, this is not taught in school. The school kids for the last 40, 50 years in most county school and municipal school boards have basically been teaching communism and how communism's so good and that the communism is the best thing because it makes them more powerful. So let's see, that's 18 minutes. Yeah, this all boils down to that most of you judge what you're hearing, if you hear it, or other stuff by how many people have listened to it. But I've done all I need to if just 2 people listen to this. Now, I've given this report, the disclosure report, to personally told a number of people already, half dozen at least, since I was at Luke Air Force Base, which is on the west side of Phoenix, Arizona. Now, also, there's a difference between land and a corporation, which is a paper contract. And that's what the county of Pinal is. It's not a physical government as much as most of you are fooled. It's a private corporation providing services to the people who sign up for it. Of course, they make it all confusing and make it seem like something bigger and more powerful, because that's what empires do. But they're basically just paper tigers, because it's just a contract, and all their bonds actually come from the taxpayers, which are on the hook to them. Now, I told one of these county employees about how they're harassing me and preventing me from doing work with a lot of other good people in this county who are attempting to put into action a state bank that is based on what Anne von Reitz has written about and talked about and been working at for decades. It's a bank that's based on assets and bonds by the members, but the bonds are supported by the knowledge and the abilities of those people, whereas your banks today that you see, all these corporate banks, these private corporate banks, they're just based on bonds that are borrowed into existence, and you're basically having to pay rent on them. And the more that are enslaved, that give their rights, their power of attorney, over to this corporation, the more powerful they are. And as many brilliant people in ages past have said, that you are owned by those who you owe money or owe anything to. That degree, they own you. So most of you out there are slaves, and we call these bond slaves. Whereas the bank that we're attempting, and other people in other counties and other nations on this earth, are working to set up real banks that are based on real assets instead of debt. But the debt people have the airwaves and have convinced people through the school systems that they're the ones that are important because they're the majority. And they've taught you that democracy is the only way. And the only problem with a democracy is if you have 10 sheep and 11 wolves or 11 ticks, gigantic ticks, or even small little ticks. In a democracy, those 11 ticks can outvote the sheep. And so they say, the 11 ticks say, we're going to suck your blood until we're totally gorged and there's even more of us. Or if you want to look at it at foxes or coyotes or whatever, they eat the sheep because they outvoted them. So that's the problem with a democracy. It ain't going to always go your way. And under that contract, under that voting contract, even if they cheat, they've won and they get to eat you. So, you have a choice, like Anne has said, to expatriate yourselves, or revoke your citizen, your residence, document that, meaning record it wherever you can. And von Reitz has a place recorded, because most of these recording houses, I've found out, these courthouses, they'll destroy those records after a while. And a courthouse is nothing but its records. So if they're destroying them or keeping you out of the building because of supposed COVID or something like that, they're no longer a courthouse. They're no longer a house of record because they've destroyed it or you don't have access to it. The public's supposed to have access to it in business hours. So, there's the disclosure, whether you're able to understand it or not. And don't blame me for not explaining it well enough. I've got other tapes that you can listen to, other videos. But here again, it is in a nutshell, and it's an update on disclosure. And you're getting more on UFO disclosures right here from a guy that is being charged with the county for collecting parts, and they call scrap, to build one. They would rather go after me for not having a washing machine than to allow me and other people to set up a different bank, a real bank. Because them seeing that somebody doesn't have a washing machine in their RV or their van or their building is more important to them, because you've allowed these idiots, these inflated egotistic, whatever they, bloodsuckers, ticks, to proliferate to the point where they think they're more than God, because they don't even want to listen to me. At least a God once in a while will listen to its creation. But these things, they weren't created. They were given power by you, but they don't want to listen to you because they've got the power of attorney. You've appointed them as your representative, and boy, they're going to do whatever in the heck they want to and sell themselves to the highest bidder. They're not going to work for you. But there's this problem on this planet that people aren't able to see what they've done, what they've created. And even when somebody tells them how to get out of it, they don't want to take the action. It's like the mark of the beast is on them, and they want to say, oh, the mark of the beast is coming tomorrow or next week or next month or next year or 3 years from now, because I don't want to have to do anything about it right now, even if I'm dirty, even if I've signed up with the beast, even if I've signed up with the devil or Lucifer or Satan or whatever. I don't want to have to correct the situation that I've created. Most of you have been fooled, but hey, that's what the world is all about. That's what you're here for, to try to figure out what in the heck's going on. And most, unfortunately, fail. And then they have to be reborn, go through all this all over again, this hell on earth. But this hell on earth could be a heaven on earth if you all, or a few more of you, or any of you, wanted to listen to what some of people like me are saying. We could have what has been come to be known as free energy, although it's not really free energy, but it's a simple form of energy collecting. And same with UFOs that are functional gravity vehicles. But this can't come out because your masters, your elite, your bloodsuckers, your big ticks have copyrighted these vehicles, these conveyances, these gasoline reciprocal engines. They've copyrighted them And that's the only thing that's allowed to be out. If I try to build a UFO or something like the Wright brothers built, the county will come in and do everything it can to terminate me and my project. So that's the reason you don't have access to UFOs. It's because the people who have them aren't going to give them to you, because the world that you know of and accept is a world of patents. And they don't want their technology patented. And most of them aren't going to tell you that, and they don't want to tell you that, because you've put yourself in a lower position, a position from which is almost impossible to get out. And yet here I'm telling you how you could do it even tomorrow and next week if you wanted. That's what I'm disclosing. But how many of you are going to do it? So in the end, you've only got yourself to blame. Even if these tricksters, these ticks, these big bloodsuckers have fooled you and confused you with words, it's ultimately you, and you know that inside. That's what all these mental problems are today, is people don't want to admit that really it's their own fault where they are. Good day. Bye.